The camera opens on a dense jungle at night. Mist curls between the trees, shadows moving where nothing should move. A voice cuts through, urgent, intimate. They thought they were prepared for anything, ambushes, mines, even death. But what they found in that jungle wasn't the enemy. It wasn't even human. This is War Files Uncovered. Subscribe now and join us as we step into the shadows of history that were never meant to be told. The night was suffocating. Not with heat, though the air clung wet and heavy against skin, but with silence. A silence too complete, too deliberate, as though the jungle itself had ordered every living thing to still its breath. Captain Thomas Hale crouched in the undergrowth, rifle pressed tight against his chest, eyes scanning the dark canopy above. His team had been inserted for reconnaissance, a covert operation meant to confirm enemy movement along a stretch of forgotten border. 8 men in total, each hardened by years of training, each accustomed to fear. But nothing had prepared them for this. At 3:42 a.m., just before first light, Torres whispered into the radio that he saw movement along the ridge. Shadows, he said, moving against the sky where no shadows should be. The others adjusted their scopes, straining through the fog, but saw nothing. Hale ordered silence, hand raised in warning, eyes never leaving the tree-line. That was when the air changed. It began as a vibration beneath the soil, faint enough to mistake for imagination. Then came the sound, low like thunder rolling in reverse, drawn down into the earth rather than across the sky. The men shifted uneasily, fingers tightening on triggers, but none spoke. They had heard artillery, mines, mortars, storms. This was none of them. This was something alive. Minutes passed like hours. The sound faded, the vibration stilled. Torres muttered a prayer in Spanish. Donovan spat into the dirt, muttering that it was nothing, just the jungle playing tricks. Hale wanted to believe him. He needed to believe him. But in the pit of his stomach, something twisted. By dawn, they moved out, advancing deeper along the river. The mission had rules: silent movement, minimum contact, eyes open for evidence of enemy encampment. The jungle pressed close, its shadows longer than they should have been, its colors muted, drained. Birds cried in the distance, but always from behind them, never ahead. The men noticed. No one spoke. At 7:18 a.m., Reyes halted, fist raised. Ahead lay the ruins of a stone structure, half consumed by roots and vines, black with age. The jungle had swallowed it centuries ago, yet it stood defiantly, its walls marked with carvings no one recognized. Symbols spiraling inward, repeating like echoes of some forgotten language. Hale gave the order to secure the perimeter. The men moved cautiously, weapons raised, boots silent against the soil. Inside, the ruins smelled of iron and damp. Shafts of light pierced cracks in the roof, illuminating walls etched with symbols, spirals leading to a single figure carved at the center. A shape without eyes, its arms stretching unnaturally long. Donovan swore softly, shaking his head. Not our business. Locals maybe. Old ghosts. But Torres lingered, tracing the carvings with trembling fingers. This is older than them, he whispered. Older than us. Before Hale could answer, the radio hissed. A burst of static, sudden and sharp, freezing every man where he stood. Then came the voice. Captain Hale. Report. It was his own voice. The men exchanged uneasy looks, eyes wide in the dim light. Hale grabbed the receiver, heart hammering. This is Hale. Who is this? Static. Then the same voice again, calm, steady, identical to his. Proceed forward. The transmission cut. Silence swallowed the chamber, thicker now, heavier. The men waited for orders, eyes on their captain. Hale forced himself to steady, to breathe, to be what they needed. He told himself it was interference, a bleed from another channel, some technical fault. But deep inside, a whisper took root. At 9:27 a.m., they moved on. The deeper they pressed, the more the jungle resisted. Roots rose like barriers. Vines clung to gear. The path wound in circles, disorienting even the most experienced among them. Reyes muttered that they were being led, herded. Donovan snapped back that paranoia killed faster than bullets. But Hale said nothing. He heard the hum again, low beneath the soil, vibrating through his boots, through his bones. At noon, Weller vanished. One moment he was there, whispering to Torres at the rear. The next, silence. The men spun, rifles raised, scanning the brush. No sound of struggle, no cry, no trace but his pack lying neatly on the ground. Hale barked his name, the radio crackled, but nothing. Just silence and the slow press of heat against their lungs. Panic crept in, quick and sharp. Donovan cursed, swore they had to turn back. Torres whispered prayers, his lips pale. Reyes watched Hale, waiting for command. Hale forced his voice steady, ordering them to hold formation, to move forward. He told himself they couldn't leave Weller behind. He told himself they had a chance if they pushed deeper. He told himself lies. By dusk, the jungle grew stranger still. Shadows stretched too far. Trees leaned where they hadn't before. The air grew heavy, thick with a metallic tang like blood. And always that hum. Stronger now, pulsing like a heartbeat beneath their feet. At 8:14 p.m., Donovan broke. He dropped his rifle, shouting into the trees, daring whatever stalked them to show itself. His voice cracked, high and ragged, echoing too far, too long. Hale moved to silence him, to steady him, but then came the sound, branches breaking, not ahead, not behind, but all around. The men froze, weapons raised, eyes darting through the dark. The jungle moved. Shadows detached from trees, shapes shifting where there should have been none. And then, from the black, something stepped forward. It was tall. Too tall. Limbs stretched impossibly long, its head tilting, faceless, eyeless. The men opened fire, rifles flashing, the night tearing with gunfire. But the figure didn't fall. The bullets passed through as though through mist, striking trees, shattering bark. And still it came, silent, unhurried. Torres screamed. Donovan fired until his rifle clicked empty. Reyes pulled Hale back, shouting that they had to run. And so they did, into the jungle, blind, desperate, their formation shattered, their discipline gone. Hale's last sight of Donovan was in the flicker of muzzle flash, his face twisted in rage and terror, the figure's limbs wrapping around him, pulling him into the dark. His scream cut short, swallowed by the night. By midnight, only 3 remained. Hale, Reyes, Torres. They stumbled through the undergrowth, lungs burning, hearts pounding, the jungle now alive with whispers. Not one voice, not 2, but dozens overlapping, speaking in every tongue. Some were theirs, some were not. And then the whisper closest of all. Hale's own voice, soft in his ear. You can't leave. The jungle pressed tighter as the hours bled into dawn. Hale's throat was raw from shouting, his chest tight from the sprint that had carried them through the night, but still he pushed forward, dragging Torres and Reyes with him. The 3 of them were all that remained now, their team shattered, their mission a shadow of memory. They stumbled into a hollow near a ridge, collapsing against the roots of ancient trees. For a moment, there was nothing but the rasp of their breath, the sting of sweat in their eyes, the trembling of hands that could not release their rifles. At 4:03 a.m., Reyes broke the silence. His voice was low, cracking, as though speaking aloud, risked drawing something nearer. That wasn't human. He left the rest unsaid, but the words hung heavy in the damp air. Hale's jaw tightened. He wanted to deny it, to drag them back into the safety of reason, but he had seen it too. Bullets hadn't touched it. Donovan's scream still rang in his ears. He steadied himself, forced the captain's voice back into his throat, and told them they had to move, to regroup, to survive until extraction. The words tasted like ash, hollow even as he spoke them. By 6:17 a.m. they reached the river. Its surface was still, glassy, reflecting the canopy above in warped shapes. Hale knelt, cupping water to his lips, only to pause. The reflection staring back at him was wrong. The face was his, but older, hollow-eyed, skin pale and stretched thin. He blinked, splashing the water, but the image remained for an instant longer before dissolving into ripples. He staggered back, heart hammering, and Reyes caught his arm, eyes searching. What did you see? Hale shook his head, unable to answer. Torres pointed downstream, voice trembling. There. The jungle opened into a clearing, where stone jutted from the earth once more. Another ruin, older than the first, its walls blackened and broken, its carvings sharper, deeper. Hale felt his stomach twist. The symbols spiraled in patterns that pulled the eyes inward, dragging thought with them. At the center of one wall was a carving identical to the one they had seen before, the eyeless figure, arms stretched wide. The men moved cautiously, rifles raised, their boots crunching over stone half buried in moss. The air inside was colder, stale, heavy with the weight of ages. The chamber was empty save for the walls themselves, but it felt occupied, watched. Torres muttered prayers beneath his breath, clutching the crucifix at his neck. Reyes swept the chamber, his rifle trembling despite his steady stance. Hale ran his fingers along the carvings, feeling grooves worn deep by centuries, grooves that pulsed faintly beneath his skin, warm like living flesh. At 7:41 a.m., the radio crackled again. All 3 men froze. The voice came clear, sharp, unbroken by static. Captain Hale. Report. Hale lifted the receiver with a hand that felt no longer his own. This is Hale. Identify yourself. The response came instantly. His own voice, calm and commanding. "Proceed forward." Reyes' face twisted in horror. "That's you." Torres stepped back, shaking his head violently, whispering that they had to leave, that the jungle was cursed, that the ruins were alive. Hale wanted to agree, to run, to abandon this madness. But the voice echoed inside him now, steady, insistent. He ordered them to move. By midday, the heat grew unbearable. The jungle sweltered, the air thick with the scent of rot. They pushed on, but the path twisted upon itself, disorienting, endless. The canopy blocked the sun, shadows lengthened, and their sense of time faltered. Hours felt like minutes. Minutes stretched into eternity. At 2:19 p.m., Torres vanished. He had been at the rear, muttering prayers, his rosary clutched tight. Then silence. Hale and Reyes spun, rifles raised, shouting his name. His gear lay scattered, his rifle abandoned, but there was no sign of struggle, no blood, no cry. Just absence. Reyes cursed, eyes wide with terror. "It's taking us one by one." Hale tried to steady him, tried to be the voice of command, but his own words faltered. His hands shook. His chest tightened. He ordered them to keep moving, but the truth was clear. They were being led. By nightfall, only Hale and Reyes remained. The jungle pressed closer, its trees bending inward like ribs around a cage. The whispers began again, faint at first, then louder, overlapping, dozens of voices at once. Some were Torres, some Donovan, some Weller. And woven among them, Hale's own voice, whispering, coaxing, commanding. At 11:02 p.m. Reyes snapped. He turned on Hale, rifle raised, eyes wild. "It's you," he shouted. "It's been you all along." Hale raised his hands, begging him to lower the weapon, but Reyes' face twisted, his finger tightening on the trigger. Then, without warning, his eyes rolled black, his mouth stretching open wider than any human mouth should, vines spilling from his throat. His rifle clattered to the ground as his body convulsed, twisted, transformed. Hale fired. The shot echoed through the trees, deafening, final. Reyes collapsed, his body writhing as vines coiled from his chest, pulling him into the earth. Hale stumbled back, rifle smoking, heart hammering. Alone now. Completely alone. The jungle fell silent once more. The silence after Reyes' death was absolute. No insects, no birds, not even the rustle of wind through leaves. Only the soft hiss of smoke from Hale's rifle, curling into the dark. He stood frozen, unable to lower his weapon, eyes locked on the patch of earth where his last man had been pulled under. The soil shifted faintly, settling as though it had digested something. Then nothing. At 12:14 a.m., Hale stumbled back, every nerve alight, his breath ragged. He was alone now, alone in a jungle that seemed to breathe with him, watch him, whisper his name. He moved in a haze, his boots dragging, the weight of his pack unbearable, his rifle a useless anchor. He wanted to scream, to call for extraction, to call for anyone. But deep down he knew there was no one left to hear. He pressed on through the dark, every step heavier, every shadow longer. Hours passed without measure, time dissolving into a blur of sweat and dread. At 3:26 a.m., he collapsed against a tree, sliding to the ground, his rifle across his lap. He fought to stay awake, to resist the exhaustion clawing at his skull. But his eyes slipped shut, and the jungle swallowed him whole. Sleep brought no rest, only visions. He saw Donovan screaming as the faceless figure wrapped around him. Torres dragged silently into the roots, Reyes' mouth splitting open into something inhuman. And woven through it all, his own face, pale and hollow, leading them onward into the dark. He woke with a cry, drenched in sweat, the taste of blood in his mouth. Dawn came without light. The canopy was so thick now it blotted out the sun, leaving only a dim, greenish glow. Hale staggered to his feet, legs trembling, mind fraying. His compass spun uselessly. The map in his pack showed nothing of the ruins he had found. He was unmoored, adrift in a place that shouldn't exist. At 9:12 a.m., he stumbled into another clearing. For a moment, his heart lifted, his camp. His gear stacked neatly, tarps stretched, the fire pit cold but intact. Relief surged through him so sharp it nearly broke him. This was real, maybe his men were still alive. Maybe none of it had happened. He ran forward, dropping to his knees beside the packs. But then he saw it. The packs were spotless, untouched, as though they had never been used. The rifles gleamed with fresh oil, no dirt, no sweat, no scratches. Even the ground was smooth, unmarked by boots. It was a mirage, a memory, a trap. And then came the radio. From the ruin at the edge of the clearing, the faint crackle of static. Hale's body moved before his mind caught up, his boots carrying him inside. The carvings on the walls glowed faintly now, pulsing with his heartbeat. The radio hissed, then cleared. "Captain Hale. Status report." It was his voice again. "Steady. Come. Unbroken." He gripped the receiver, his hands slick with sweat. "I don't know where I am. My team is gone." "The jungle?" The voice cut him off. "Your team is not gone. They are with us." Rage broke through his fear. "What are you?" he demanded, his voice cracking. The response was laughter. Not loud, not cruel. Just his own laugh, broken and warped, curling through the static like smoke. Hale dropped the receiver, stumbling back, his heart hammering so hard it threatened to tear through his chest. By noon he pressed onward. He couldn't stay in the ruin, not with the echo of himself circling his mind. The jungle had changed again. The trees were no longer trees. Their bark peeled in sheets, revealing layers beneath that pulsed like flesh, veins throbbing faintly with some unseen current. The air stank of rot. Overhead, the canopy sagged lower, pressing down like a ceiling. He felt trapped inside a living thing. At 1:37 p.m., the clearing appeared, and in it, his men. Reyes, Donovan, Weller, Torres. They stood in formation, rifles at their sides, uniforms crisp, eyes forward. Relief surged so violently Hale sobbed, stumbling forward. "Reyes, Donovan, it's me." They turned in unison, slowly, too slowly. Their faces lifted and Hale froze. Their eyes were gone, replaced by black pits weeping fluid. Their mouths stretched open, splitting skin, revealing rows of vine-like teeth. And in perfect synchronization they spoke, not with their voices, but with his. "You are with us now." Hale screamed, raising his rifle, firing in blind panic. The rounds tore through them, but they didn't fall. They swayed forward, rifles lifting though their hands never moved. Hale fired until the rifle clicked empty, then turned and ran. The jungle twisted around him, roots rising to trip him, branches clawing at his gear, the laughter of his own voice echoing from every direction. At 2:26 p.m., he collapsed by a ravine, chest heaving, the rifle clattering from his hands. He stared down into the black water below, shapes writhing beneath the surface but never breaking it. He thought of leaping, ending it all, but the thought curdled inside him. The water would not kill him. It would keep him. By dusk, 6:14 p.m., the jungle began to hum again. Not insects, not birds, an electrical vibration that burrowed beneath his skin. Hale staggered toward it, stumbling into another ruin older than the rest, half swallowed by the earth. The carvings were sharper, cleaner, spirals that seemed to move when he wasn't looking. Inside, the chamber stretched impossibly wide, its ceiling lost in shadow. At its center, a pedestal of bone and stone, and atop it, a helmet. His helmet. Hale froze. It bore every mark he knew, his visor scratched, his blood smeared along the edge. But it was too clean, too new, waiting for him. He reached out, fingers brushing the metal. The chamber groaned. The carvings flared with light, and a voice filled the air. Not in his head, not through the radio. In the chamber itself, booming, endless. "You were never meant to leave." The walls peeled open into eyes, hundreds of them, staring. The floor pulsed. From the shadows, figures rose, soldiers in armor, in red coats, in uniforms from every war. Faces blank, eyes hollow. And at their center, the creature. The faceless figure, limbs stretching impossibly long, its head brushing the ceiling. It leaned close, its void inches from his face. Hale's knees buckled. His voice broke. "Why us? Why soldiers?" The answer wasn't words. It was visions. Wars across centuries. Men dying in trenches, deserts, swamps. Blood soaking into soil, feeding roots, feeding something older than time. The jungle wasn't just a place. It was a wound. And war was its food. Hale clutched his head, screaming, images burning through his skull. His men consumed, their voices stripped, their memories stored like trophies. He saw himself too, standing among them, eyes black, whispering to the next soldier who wandered in. At 8:42 p.m., the vision ended. The chamber fell silent. The creature still loomed, patient, eternal. Hale staggered to his feet, knife trembling in his hand. His voice cracked. "I won't join you." The faceless head tilted. And the voice came again, softer, curling like smoke into his ear. "You already have." Hale drove the knife into his thigh, screaming in pain, desperate to feel something human. He stumbled toward the exit, limping, shaking, refusing to look back. The figures did not follow. The creature did not chase. It only watched, silent, as he fled into the night. But the jungle was waiting. The night dragged on like a fever dream, the jungle's pulse rising and falling with every step Hale took. His thigh bled freely where the blade had cut, a hot river staining his fatigues, yet he welcomed the pain. It anchored him, tethered him to something human, something not yet swallowed by the ruins' visions. He limped through tangled undergrowth, every branch clawing at his uniform, every vine whispering against his skin as though eager to drag him back. At 12:27 a.m., Hale collapsed against a fallen tree. The jungle around him glowed faintly, not with moonlight, but with a phosphorescence that bled from the leaves themselves, veins pulsing like capillaries beneath their surfaces. He closed his eyes for only a moment, but the sound of boots crunching leaves snapped them open. Shapes emerged from the glow, soldiers. Not his men this time, but others. Their uniforms were mottled, tattered, belonging to eras long past. A Napoleonic shako tilted at an impossible angle, a rusted bayonet still fixed to a musket, a gas mask dripping with condensation from wars long since ended. They moved silently, stepping between trees as if the jungle itself exhaled them. Hale's breath froze. He raised his rifle, though his hands trembled violently. The figures paused. For a second he thought they would lunge, tear him apart, but instead they turned their heads toward him in perfect unison. Their faces were hidden in shadow, eyes hollow pits, but their movements were smooth, deliberate. Then, as if answering some unheard command, they faded back into the foliage, vanishing into the glow without a sound. The silence afterward was worse. By dawn, his fever had set in. The wound on his leg throbbed with infection, each step sending fire up his spine. He staggered onward, dragging himself through mud thick with the stench of decay. At 6:45 a.m., he broke into another clearing, and for a fleeting instant, hope surged. A helicopter. U.S. markings on the tail. Its rotors still but intact. Extraction. He stumbled toward it, shouting, voice cracking. The hatch opened, and Reyes stepped out. His uniform was perfect, his skin pale but whole, his eyes black voids that drank in the morning light. Torres followed, then Donovan, then Weller, all emerging one by one. Their smiles were wrong, too wide, too still. Hale froze, horror choking his throat. The men lifted their arms in eerie synchronization, beckoning him forward. Hale staggered back, shaking his head violently. You're not real. You're not them. Reyes tilted his head, lips moving, but the voice that came out was Hale's. Come, Cole. You will return to us. The helicopter dissolved before his eyes, the men collapsing into vines and smoke, the clearing itself folding inward like a maw. Hale turned and ran, his body failing but driven by sheer terror, lungs burning as the jungle bent unnaturally around him, never letting him escape. By midday, delirium claimed him. He saw his daughter's face, bright, innocent, smiling, but her eyes were black pits, her mouth whispering words he couldn't hear. He saw his own reflection in a pool of stagnant water, but the figure staring back raised its rifle first, pulling the trigger. He fell back, clutching at his chest, but no bullet came. Only the echo of a gunshot rolling through the trees. At 2:11 p.m., he stumbled upon a clearing unlike the rest. The ground was barren, stripped of vegetation, a wide circle of scorched earth. At its center, a single tree remained, dead, petrified, its branches stretched upward like skeletal arms. Carved into its bark were names. Dozens. Hundreds. Hale staggered forward, eyes scanning the etchings. They were soldiers' names, ranks, units stretching back centuries. Some he recognized from history books, men who had vanished, their fates unknown. And there, at the very bottom, freshly carved, was his own. Captain Jonathan Hale. His knees buckled. He clawed at the carving, desperate to erase it, but the letters bled, dark sap oozing like fresh ink. His breath came ragged, his vision blurred, and when he turned, the faceless creature stood at the edge of the clearing. It loomed taller than before, its limbs stretching impossibly long, its featureless face tilting as though amused by his desperation. Hale staggered back, knife trembling in his hand, throat raw as he shouted, "I won't be yours." The ground cracked beneath him, roots tearing upward, vines coiling around his legs. He hacked at them, screaming, slicing through green flesh that bled black. The creature did not move. It only raised one arm, pointing toward him. And in that instant, the whispers surged back. His own voice multiplied, layered, chanting his name over and over until the jungle itself seemed to vibrate with it. At 4:23 p.m., he broke free, stumbling into the trees once more, bloodied and broken. He didn't know where he was going anymore. He didn't care. All that mattered was movement, forward motion. One more step to keep the darkness from swallowing him whole. The whispers faded into echoes, but the name carved into the tree burned behind his eyes. By nightfall, Hale could no longer tell if he was awake. Shadows stretched impossibly long, roots curled into shapes like grasping hands, and every breath of wind carried the scent of decay. He stumbled upon what he thought was another ruin, but as he stepped inside, he realized it wasn't stone at all. It was bone. Thousands of bones, fused together into walls and arches, skulls grinning from every angle. The floor shifted beneath him, vertebrae grinding like gears. And there, at the center of the chamber, was a mirror. Cracked, ancient, its surface tarnished yet reflecting with cruel clarity. Hale approached, unable to resist, his reflection staring back. But it wasn't him, not entirely. Its eyes were black pits, its skin pale and stretched thin, its mouth curled into a smile he had never worn. The reflection raised its rifle. And this time the shot wasn't just an echo. The gunshot shattered the silence. Hale collapsed, clutching at his chest, gasping for air. But there was no wound, no blood. His body shook violently as he realized the truth. The shot had not come from the rifle in his hands, nor from any enemy he could face. It had come from the reflection itself. He lay sprawled across the chamber floor of bone, staring at the cracked mirror, where his double still stood tall and unbroken, staring down at him with that unnatural smile. Its lips moved, but no sound came. Hale's own voice filled the room instead, echoing from every wall. "You cannot kill what you already are." The mirror shattered with a sudden crack. Shards rained down around him, clattering against skulls and ribs, slicing his skin in shallow lines. He scrambled back, eyes wide, chest heaving, knife raised like a child clutching a toy for protection. The reflection was gone, but the voice remained. By 2:09 a.m., Hale stumbled back into the jungle, delirious, bleeding from shallow cuts, his uniform tattered. He had no food, no water, no direction. His body screamed to collapse, but his mind, fractured though it was, forced him forward. He had to find a way out. He had to. But the jungle would not let him. At 3:33 a.m. he heard the laughter. Soft, distant at first, drifting through the foliage. He froze, every hair on his body rising. The sound grew closer, louder, until it seemed to circle him. It was his own laugh again, warped, distorted, bouncing off the trees like ricochets. He spun in every direction, rifle raised, finger trembling against the trigger. But there was nothing there. Only trees. Only vines. Then, at the edge of his vision, movement. A figure slipped between the trunks. Familiar gait, familiar shoulders. Hale's breath caught. Donovan. He stumbled forward, desperate, calling out. The figure stopped, half-turned, and Hale froze. Donovan's face was pale, eyes black, his jaw hanging too wide, vines twitching inside his throat. He raised a hand, beckoning. Hale fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face, torn between rage and despair. He wanted to rush forward, to hold on to the last shred of his team, but he couldn't. He knew it wasn't Donovan. It never had been. With a strangled sob, he raised his rifle and fired. The figure dissolved into smoke and vines, curling upward before vanishing completely. By dawn, Hale's strength was nearly gone. His body moved like an automaton, driven by instinct alone. At 6:21 a.m., he stumbled upon a clearing unlike any other. The ground was wet, not with rain, but with blood. Rivers of it snaked through the grass, pooling in the dirt. The stench was overwhelming. In the center of the clearing stood a structure, half temple, half altar, constructed from twisted roots and human remains. Bones formed the stairs, skulls the railing, their jaws forever locked in silent screams. Hale's knees buckled at the sight, while rising in his throat. He knew deep down that this was the heart. At 7:05 a.m. he climbed. Each step cracked beneath his weight, brittle bones snapping, dust rising. He forced himself upward, driven by some mixture of rage, fear, and defiance. At the top, he found an altar carved into the roots, slick with blood. And upon it, his knife. Waiting. He stared at it, trembling. It was the same blade he still held in his hand. He looked down, his knife was gone. His palm clutched nothing but air. The faceless figure emerged from the shadows behind the altar, towering, its limbs stretching out like roots to the horizon. Hale staggered back, his voice breaking. "Why me? Why us?" The figure leaned closer, its void where a face should be hovering inches from his own. And for the first time it spoke, not in his voice, not in whispers, but in a deep, resonant tone that shook the altar itself. "Because war never ends. And neither will you." Visions crashed into him. Trench warfare in the Somme. Soldiers choking on gas. Screams in the jungles of Vietnam. gunfire in deserts, explosions in cities. Every war, every death, every soldier consumed by the soil, feeding the roots, feeding the creature. Hale's mind broke beneath the weight of it. He saw himself in every conflict, every face his own, every voice his own. He was not a man. He was a fragment of the cycle. At 9:14 a.m., he collapsed to his knees, sobbing, knife trembling in his hand. He pressed the blade to his throat, whispering through tears, "I won't be part of you." The faceless figure tilted its head. The roots shifted beneath him, tightening, pulling him closer to the altar. Hale's screams split the jungle as he drove the blade forward, only for it to dissolve into smoke before touching his skin. The creature's voice rolled over him, final and absolute. "You already are." By nightfall, Hale was gone. Not dead. Not alive. His body wandered through the jungle, eyes black, mouth whispering orders into the dark. Another soldier absorbed. Another name carved into the tree. And when the next patrol came months later, they found only ruins. Their radios crackled, faint but clear. A voice spoke. "Come." Commanding. Familiar. "Proceed forward." The patrol never spoke of what they saw that day. The official report filed to command listed it as an abandoned site of interest, no significant findings. But those who stepped into the ruins knew the truth, even if they could never bring themselves to admit it aloud. The jungle had eyes, and once you entered its heart, you were never truly free again. At 4:12 p.m., Corporal Winters, the youngest of the patrol, stumbled on a tree at the edge of the clearing. Its bark was blackened, twisted, names carved deep into its surface. He leaned closer, tracing the grooves with trembling fingers, and froze. Among the hundreds of names, some worn with age, others fresh as if carved that morning, one stood out. Captain Jonathan Hale. The date beside it was the day their mission began. Winters staggered back, eyes wide, whispering Hale's name to his squad leader. But when the others looked, the carving was gone. Smooth bark. No names. No sign of disturbance. Winters swore, trembling, but his men dismissed it, urging him onward. They had no time for ghosts. But that night, as the patrol camped by the river, Winters woke to the sound of boots pacing the perimeter. He rose, rifle in hand, scanning the darkness. There, just beyond the firelight, stood a man. His uniform was U.S. issue, his posture straight, his face hidden in shadow. Winters called out, no answer. The figure lifted a radio to his lips. The static cracked once, then cleared. Proceed forward. Winters froze, bow rising in his throat. The voice wasn't the stranger's. It was Hale's. Come. Steady. Commanding. He stepped closer, heart pounding, but the figure dissolved into the trees, gone as quickly as it appeared. The static lingered, echoing faintly from Winters' own radio, though no one touched it. By morning, he tried to convince himself it was exhaustion, a trick of the mind. But the jungle offered no comfort. Every tree seemed to lean inward, every rustle of leaves whispered in a voice that sounded too familiar. He avoided the other's eyes, but when the patrol regrouped, he caught Sergeant Calloway staring at him with the same haunted look. Calloway had heard it too. They left the jungle in silence, and though they reached extraction without incident, none of them ever spoke of what they carried home. The silence was safer. The silence was survival. But weeks later, in the barracks, Winters woke at 3:42 a.m. to the crackle of a radio. The voice came clear as if standing at his bedside. Come. Steady. Commanding. Captain Hale. Report. His throat closed. His hands shook as he reached for the switch, desperate to shut it off. But the radio wasn't even on. The sound came from nowhere. From everywhere. And when Winters looked into the mirror above his sink, the reflection that stared back was not his own. The eyes were black. The mouth curved into a smile he had never worn. The jungle had followed him. Because war never ends. And neither do the ones it consumes.